So let's talk about if today, right? In our video here. So we know that if followed by the expressions which going to return boolean either true or false. If true is going to this, so in this case say true. Now what happens if I say false? It's not going to show anything because it will never do this statement. Now talk about these curly braces. Is it important to have it? According to Java, it's not required. C is still not showing, right? It still work as you have it, correct? But the rule of thumb is always having it. You see, it still work as the same. Why we have to have it? Because if I want to say another statement here, and I say false again, so what should be the output of this program? You don't have curly braces. Like I said, Java is not required, but it's not good to do that because you may thought that it should not print any of this, but it's actually it's going to say false. They're not going to do this statement, but still execute this statement because this is not a part of if. It's just like its own statement. So that's why I say true again. But you may see when being written like this, it looks like it's part of the if, but it's actually not because no curly braces, right? But when you do put curly braces, so that's why it's a good way to always put curly braces, right? That you won't get confused. Now this become part of the if, then it will never show, right? Because false. Now this also apply to else. So what happens if I say else like this? So question is, what should be the output of this program? You may see that. So the program will never run. It show errors here because you cannot have else without if. Remember syntax that we're gonna review: if, else. You cannot have else by itself. Remember again, this if for this statement, and it's done. That's it. And this is stay by itself, just like another statement. And else is waiting for another if. You cannot just say else right away. You have to have if. Right? Then this program will run. Because it was missing another if, right? Else cannot stay by itself. Alright, so now if this program runs, the question is, what should be the output of this? So the answer for this, once you run, true again, because since there's no curly braces, it's going to stay as a statement, right? So true again. And if it's true, then it's going to execute and do true again. Else, it's not going to do this because false. no curly braces, but it's going to do this because it's like its own statement, right? Just like this scenario in line 9. So that's why we have false again. So that's why it's very bad practice to write a code without curly braces. It's going to make you confused. So if your intention is to do that, put curly braces, right? Even you have one statement, good practice just keep putting it, right? Now, what should be the answer? So the answer for this one should be true again, because it's only do the true, right? When it's false, never do this, and false, this never do this, and there's no else here. Look at nested if else. Nested if else is same thing. We have if else, but inside if else you can have another if else inside. It can be like nested more than 2, 3, 4. Okay, it can be nested like many levels. So that's why good practice on writing program is always indent, right? So if you look at when I write program, I keep indenting. Whenever I have new curly braces, I indent the statement. Indent, right? So that's how you organize your program. So let's take a look at nested if else. Like for example, this can be nested, right? Let's say since that's false. So if it's true, I'm going to do another statement. I'm going to check again before I'm going to say true again. Or I can say true again here, and nested with another statement. And I'm going to say true again. And can you imagine that if you don't have these curly braces, and you will see that type of questions, and it's nested like that? Right? So that's why let's talk about curly braces, right? So, but in the test, you may see something like that, right? So what should be answered? If it's true, it's going to do this, and it's true, it's going to do this, right? So we gonna say this belongs to this, and else. So this is called nested. And you could have another else inside your nested too, right? Because if can has else, and then we can say true false. Because it was true here and it's false. Okay? And the nested can be inside else too, like that, if true. You say true, false, true, else. So that's why always put your curly braces when you write a code. Otherwise, it's so confusing. So you have nested here and you have another nested in here, right? For the if. And when you run this, we have when it's true, say true again. And when it's true, that's why it's do the true here, true again. and we never do the false. But when you don't have curly braces, it's going to be different. If you want to try, we can remove them all. And like I said, the curly braces is not necessary, right? But in this case, it's going to be necessary for this else, right? Okay. So what is the answer for this one? Alright, so the answer should be, when it's true, it's going to be true again. This is nested here, right? So 2, 2 again. It's never do else because it's true. So it's going to do this no longer nested when you don't have curly braces. But it's nested to this if, but it's not nested to this else anymore. So it's still have to do this if true, right? So that's why indentation is going to help. It's going to be true, false, true. And not going to do else because it was true. And then we're done with the if true. Then we have to do the else, which never do this else, then do last statement, which is its own statement, not belong to any if else, which is false again. Alright, so let's talk about the application of nested if else. So in the authentication process of username and password, you have to get the username and password to authenticate, right? And you have to validate two things. First is the username. So we said, now instead of using expression like I say Boolean algebra true or false, we actually replace this with the expression in the Boolean algebra expressions. Boolean expression mean you have true or false back. Like for example, I'm going to say string username equals to tennis. Now I want to say username dot equals, right? Username actually you can do ignore case, right? Uppercase, lowercase mean different. So equal ignore case, right? To the user login. So I'm going to say login, which login pretty much is getting from it is string, right? And let's just use the option pane, option pane dot show input dialog, like enter username. So once the user enter username, we have to authenticate that using if. If it's equals, that means this statement returns what? True, correct? This whole thing is going to return true, right? Just like what I show you. If it's true, what do? We do this statement. If it's false, we do this statement, right? So if it's false, what you want to say? We're going to say sorry, right? So let's do system.out.print fail, right? Authentication. Now we are use nested if here. If it's true, we gonna validate again for password, right? And of course we gonna read the password from the database and assume that after we read, we just store it into the variable say name password. So again, when you validate this, we're going to prompt the user to enter password and do this nested if